Ladies and gentlemen, please be at ease.
Something's out there in space that regulations don't cover.
So in this sequence we're here to talk about mainstreaming and its value to the ecosystem services approach. So what is mainstreaming? And that is really not a simple question, in fact. Mainstreaming is a complex process of bringing in new information, new concepts, new ways of thinking, new ways of working into an established set of rules and procedures. The context that I have worked in is one where really we're trying to mainstream ecosystem service information into development decision making or land use planning with an effort to change how those processes work so that we get to an outcome of improved ecosystem management, improved biodiversity and improved benefits for people. So I think it's important to start with a good understanding of governance, because we are really talking about decision making here, and governance is just that. It's a set of rules and a way of rule making that we as a group of people go through to set the rules for society and make decisions for what we want to see happen. In a governance context or in a governance system, there are some things that are really easy to change, or at least easier, and some things that are much more difficult. Some examples of things that are easier to change are policies, the available knowledge, institutions, processes that we go through. Some examples of things that are harder to change are cultural norms, the values of society itself, the political processes, or just the power play that's going on. So it's really important to remember that in this governance or this decision-making context, we have to choose where we can act with mainstreaming, and often we tend to try and influence the things that we can influence and maybe ignore some of the more difficult things to do. So going back to our definition of mainstreaming, thinking about changing the rules of the game, it might be helpful here to think about a more universal analogy. So let's imagine this as a football game. The game is in play, the teams are on the field, everybody's shouting in the crowd, and you decide you want to change the rules of that game. You don't like how the game has been played, or you'd like to see another team win. Something about this seems not fair to you. So you want to influence how that game is being played. Well, can you do that? What are your chances of success? You can try and change the rule book and bring that to the game and say, here you go, a new set of rules to go by. If you're a spectator sitting on the sidelines or shouting at your telly, what are the chances of you really affecting those changes, really bringing about those rules? If you're the referee, you might have a better chance. If you're a player in the game who get to do it straight away, well, in fact, you've got a much greater chance of seeing things go the way that you'd like it to go. And the same thing with mainstreaming. We got to be conscious that just because we bring a new piece of information, a great scientific report, a good publication, or a new idea to the table, if we're a spectator sitting outside the process, well, it's really hard to imagine that we're actually going to be able to change much. If, on the other hand, you're part of the process, you get engaged in that messy context of politics, rule setting, changing the social norms, then your chances of bringing your vision the chances of you bringing your vision into play are much greater. So in the sequences to come, we're going to be exploring some examples of how mainstreaming works in practice. How are people in the international sector, in governments, in private sector are going about changing the rules of the game. We're going to explore the Sustainable Development Goals, just as one example of where ecosystem services information has been really successfully mainstreamed. And we're going to explore some other examples of bringing those rules, bringing those values into play in national policy making.
MXA calling.